Hey, welcome everyone to tonight's special broadcast of the State of Greater Western New York Report. It is a third town hall meeting, Greater Western New York Town Hall meeting. That's right, this is the third time we've done this, and this is again an special evening broadcast. We want to tell you that it's great to have you all here. We're going to be talking about what has actually worked. Everybody talks about the weather and doesn't do anything about it. Well, everybody talks about things that are going on in Albany, and believe it or not, people are doing something about it. We've got three of those people here tonight. They're going to tell us a little bit about what they do. You'll be able to ask them questions, and at the end, you'll be able to talk amongst yourselves to see what you could do. So once again, you're watching the special edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report, the Greater Western New York Town Hall Meeting, Winter 2022. And of course, this is brought to you as always by...
Our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard. Bending Honeylake Falls Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa.
Hi there, and welcome again, everyone, to this special edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report, the third Greater Western New York virtual town hall meeting. That's right. We've got people from all 17 counties together in our room talking or listening to what we're going to be talking about tonight, and they will be talking. You will be talking by the end of the evening. If you're watching this on the rebroadcast, I'm sorry it's not live. You could have signed up for the live event. It was free, but those of you who are here live right now, you get the best of what we've got. Behind me, you see our three guests, and I'm going to introduce them one at a time, and they're each going to spend about 7 minutes talking about what the issue was that triggered them to do something, what it is they did, and then what the repercussions were. What were the results of their actions? Let me actually quickly introduce you from left to right. We have Skip Gingeritz. He's the supervisor of the town of Marilla in Erie County. We have Tom Ridgey. He is the councilman, one of the councilmen from the town of Yates in Orleans County. And then to the rightmost is Matt Cole. He's the superintendent of the Livonia Central School Districts in Livingston County. So we're going to start with Skip. Skip, tell us a little bit about, what it was that triggered you, what it was that precipitated you passing the resolutions that you did, and the ramifications of what happened once you did pass those resolutions. Were you successful? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Tuesday before Thanksgiving, our county executive put in a mask mandate long before the governor filed suit. And I was in the town hall when that happened, when it came over the news. Immediately, the town officials that were here told me that they had enough and they were not going to comply. They said, this is it. It doesn't work, these mask mandates. It's we the people, not I the tyrant, our county executive, which has been in a state of emergency for over 2 years at that time. Shortly thereafter, I started getting texts on my phone and phone calls from businesses and residents that we've had enough, can do something. We actually would like you to explore the idea of going to a neighboring county where none of these mandates were in place and they were already defying what was going on in the state. So by Thanksgiving, I had polled all the town board and the other town officials on what they wanted to do, if they thought it was appropriate to actually put the Erie County Health Department on notice that we were not going to comply, and to tell them they were not welcome to step foot in the town of Marilla to harass or intimidate any of our residents or our businesses' right to choose what was best for them. So that's what we did. We shot off emails off to the local news stations. Immediately, one of them replied Thanksgiving Day. We went on record, immediately hit the news by 6 o'clock p.m. that night. And it exploded right from there. We did not expect the interest that went across and how fast it went across Western New York and through social media. Immediately, social media started lighting up by Thanksgiving evening. I was getting texts, other board members were, and phone calls and emails started flooding into the town hall in overwhelming support. So we did put the health department on notice Thanksgiving evening, sent it down to the health department stating our position, and said we're not going to comply. And it kind of was history after that. Again, we did not expect the results. It wasn't too long after, by that Saturday, um, after we were already getting flooded with emails and phone calls, like I said, overwhelming support, that other towns started following suit. And we were starting to find here immediately that residents and businesses across the county was defying the mandate. So it inspired a lot of people individually to say, no, we were not going to comply. And to my knowledge, there was no time that the health department could actually enforce it because there was so much defiance. And we seen West Seneca go on record that Saturday, which is a good sized suburb of Buffalo, and then Grand Island, and then village of Williamsville, which is in the heart of Amherst, which is one of the largest towns in Erie County. And by that time, then we did officially pass a resolution that found Tuesday at our work session, and again, it was covered by the news media. We were told that, well, we were going to get a lot of backlash, that the health department was going to target us, and it never happened. And I think didn't know how to react. And then as time went on, we heard that it went across the state, that it was heard in Albany, down even in New York City, although in New York City, the media didn't cover it the best of light. So when the governor did do the mask mandate, it provided, I think, a tool for other communities and even counties say we were not going to comply. And by that time, 37 counties went on record they were not going to comply with the governor's mask mandate, and the health departments were not going to enforce it. And ironically, all the downstate counties, Nassau and Suffolk County, all but Westchester County, said they weren't going to comply, along with a good share of the upstate communities. So I think what we did, we inspired a movement, basically because nobody seen government actually doing that, and I don't think they knew how to react to a community of a little over 5,000 people, and how to take it. So that's kind of where we're at, and then it has moved on from that, where we're pushing back on the county on a number of things that we feel we're not equally represented, and we continue to push on them on other issues, and the abuse of the health commissioner and their overtime. We did go on standard that their overtime was over $300,000. The only health commissioner that took overtime, which was illegal in our opinion, and there had been lawsuits brought against the health commissioner and the county executive for that. It's pending in court. And then now we've been actually exploring the idea, along with other towns, leaving the county of Erie because we feel that we get represented equally, and that we're ignored on not just the issue of mandates, what our unique concerns are and issues, but on other issues such as our care of our highways and the rural atmosphere that we comply with. And it's interesting to note, I think the biggest reason why a lot of the businesses had troubles with it is our border rural counties, which were not shutting down. So people were going over to those counties to do business, and not far away to Warsaw, Batavia, and that was what Grand Island was finding. They were going to Niagara Falls, and they were losing a lot of business, and it just was a no-brainer that we had to defend our businesses' right to decide for themselves. We had businesses in our town that, again, we empowered the people. We gave them the best information possible out there, and we felt that they would do the right thing. And some businesses required to have masks on to enter their business. Others, we left it up to option. So the residents had a right to choose whether they went and shop there or do business there, or go somewhere else. And we thought it was very successful. We did not have any spike in spread. Ironically, out of all the municipalities in Erie County, which there's 25 towns and 16 villages, we were the lowest transmission rate of any municipality. And right from the beginning, we were not really complying with things and doing our own thing. And we left it up again, up to all the organizations and other businesses to decide what's best for them.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Skip. Now, John had a little different situation, a little different event that spurred his group on. So, John, tell us a little bit about, what you did, but remind people that it was some time ago. So this is not something that they would have remembered as something as a recent occurrence, but it did occur, and it was pretty pervasive. You got several towns and a couple of counties involved. Go ahead, John.
Okay. So, hi everyone. My name's John Regi, and really happy to be speaking with everyone. And I was very happy to be invited by the state of Greater Western New York, and I want to thank you guys for that. Allow me very quickly. I was born in the town of Caledonia, New York, which is right near Livonia. We used to play you guys in football all the time. I think we still do. But nowadays, I live in the town of Yates, which is in northern Orleans County. The of our town borders Lake Ontario. And I'm a member of the town board. And it's very, I've thought a lot about this. I was not one of those guys to really want to get involved in a lot of things. I just wanted to live and be left alone. And I thought a lot about, hey, why did I become a member of the town board? And it was very clear immediately to me that we had a fight for home rule on our hands. And so you just have to fall, and that's what I ended up doing. And as Chris has mentioned, this started in October 2014. It's still not quite done. There's like one half of one nail of the last nail in the coffin that's not completely closed down yet, but we're very, very close. So in October 14, our trigger was that we learned that an industrial wind developer, Apex Clean Energy, was looking to develop an industrial wind turbine in our town and in the town next door, Somerset. Of course, we were not happy with that. They surreptitiously approached landowners and signed them turbine leases before they started talking about it at all. So we didn't know anything about it. In the meantime, when we did find out about it, we realized that the state had passed an ordinance, Article 10, in 2011 that severely restricted home rule. And it was really done to minimize public input and impact on project siting. They just wanted these things to be set anywhere. So again, Article 9 was under attack, as it is all over New York State. So what did we do? We organized. We packed town hall meetings, and we packed them. We were able to put the town board, which was the next election cycle. I was elected to the Yates Town Board, as was my running mate, Mr. Jim Simon, who is the supervisor. We've been serving since that time, and we've been able to turn the whole town board over to home rule friendly people. Immediately, upon getting into office, we passed opposition resolutions, surveys. We surveyed the people to gain an understanding of where they stood on this turbine project and home rule, and being told what to do by the state. 83% of the town opposed. So we felt that we had a mandate. So we started pushing county legislatures to pass support resolutions. We began writing editorials. We passed a sanctuary city resolution, home rule sanctuary city resolution. Worked with national media outlets and writers. We began putting advertisements in the Albany media and started talking about the home rule attack and that was occurring in our towns, but really all over the state where these types of projects, massive renewable energy projects, were going to be proposed. And we were successful in rendering desirable to the developer to continue with the project. All of that work we did, being loud, proud, work. Okay, would it be great? It would be wonderful, except there was a reaction from the state. and the developers. The developers began attacking our towns. They tried to get me fired from my job, and my company backed me up, which was great. I was not retired at the time. The lobbyists started to attack us. The Alliance for Clean Energy Western in New York, Sierra Club developers, and others. They wanted to eliminate our public position on this improper siting. And then the Albany attacks started. They changed the law in 2020. They implemented an accelerated renewable energy growth and community benefit act, which basically took all of our input away, all of it, except for our ability to assess these projects locally. Well, in 2021 budget amendment, they also removed the local control of project tax assessment, which laid us open. Okay. So we ended up fighting back, and our counter reaction was we ratcheted up national scale media presence. Okay, so we had connections with a lot of writers who write for the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, U.S. Today, and others. They were very, very good about including us in their writings on home rule and also on this whole renewable energy green push thing. Tucker Carlson came out, his people came out and did a documentary called Blown Away, The People versus Big Wind. And that's in Fox Nation, actually, if you were interested in seeing it. It kind of tells the whole story of what we were doing and what we did and how we won. We met with state and federal representatives, more editorial, more national news coverage. We implemented a lawsuit to fight these, and we basically partnered with 30 other contributing municipalities, partner municipalities, and organizations. Okay, so I know it's a bit about renewable energy, but it's really about home rule, and you've got okay, the state is trying to destroy the public discourse via this attack on home rule. And they're going to come for all of us sooner or later. They're going to hit something that's near and dear to you, and then you're going to have to. And when you fight, you can't stop. We've been at this since 2014. We don't see an end in this until I don't know when. So we're always on a war footing. And our statement is, this fight does not end until we win. And I think that from the home rule perspective, that's how you got to do it.
All right. Thanks, John. And I want to remind everybody that there was something in this year's budget, temporarily, it's been taken out, that would have essentially stripped home rule out of everything for all these towns, counties, villages. And it's been removed because a lot of people complained about it. But this is an issue, as John says, that keeps popping up. Now let's switch gears a bit. We've been talking about town boards and what elected officials could do, but there are other types of government entities, other types of government officials. And with us again tonight is Matt Cole. He's the superintendent of Livonia Central Schools. And they had, again, this is a more recent issue that they had to deal with, and they were very successful in bringing together. So, Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about, what triggered it, what you did, and what was the response that you got?
Yeah, thank you. John, thank you for your story too and your tenacity. It's very clear that those football days against the Bulldogs came out and all your hard work there. Again, thank you for inviting me to your program. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to share my perspective. I'm a proud Bulldog. I've been in Livonia for a long time. A proud lifelong resident of small, rural, tight-knit communities in central New York and western New York. I don't know about anybody else, but anytime I work on the national level or have to travel, I really feel compelled to share that Livonia is not New York City. We have to describe that we're from western New York and that, we're 5 hours away from the city, because certainly, that gets the perspective of New York being all one New York, is certainly something I always feel I need to differentiate for. And I share this because that's really what we've experienced as school districts regarding kind of life in the pandemic, right? Growing up in these small rural communities that many of us live in, we see how sensible and pragmatic problem solving proves to be far more successful than the many political and philosophical approaches that are all too often, paint everything with a very broad brush and lead to detached solutions with many unintended and perhaps some intended consequences. This certainly happened throughout the pandemic as we were governed from Albany, press conference by press conference, with little to no communication or collaboration to share what was actually happening in our local communities with the pandemics in our schools. During the pandemic, though, we forged, not surprisingly, we forged a great partnership with Livingston County. We benefited from their smart, their practical, their responsive leadership at Livingston County Department of Health. We collaborated directly and daily with them and our schools to ensure that our students and our staff were both safe and able to engage in learning. As a result of that, throughout the 2 years of the pandemic, Livonia Central School District was able to find a way to be open through our dedicated staff and our trusting community and our partnership with the county. We were open 5 days a week, all day long, K through 12, which was really an anomaly as you look across the nation and throughout the world. We did that by acknowledging and responding to the local context, where we supported, those families that wanted to stay home at different times during the pandemic, but we also supported those families that wanted to come to school, and so I think that's really what schools are built to do. And so, as we were, in the last month on February 2nd, after delayed decision making at the state, we came together as Livingston County superintendents, as did other rural regions across our state, to draft a letter to Governor Hochul and New York State Department of Health Commissioner Bassett, asking that we be given the appropriate guidance for an exit strategy regarding all mitigation measures, and not to include mandates, but include recommendations and guidance. We requested that local control be fully restored to our school districts to enable us to make decisions appropriate for our individual communities, our local health context, in consultation and partnership with Livingston County Department of Health. The following week, our Livingston County Board of Supervisors joined us in supporting our call for restoring local control regarding mitigation measures for our schools. Throughout the pandemic, I think our school leaders, our county health officials, and our county leaders here in Livingston County consistently and regularly called on Albany to provide information, recommendations, and guidance, but not mandates. We wanted to make sure that our local schools and communities could make the right decisions within our local context. We partnered together as school districts in Livingston County, as well as with our partners at Livingston County Department of Health, and really we're very responsive and able to keep our communities safe. During the previous Cuomo administration, all that advocacy fell on deaf ears, and certainly was an exercise of futility, even though we kept doing it. In some ways, fortunately, it appears the new administration is a bit more open to listening and receiving feedback from our statewide superintendent organization, as well as engaging some stakeholders in that conversation. So there's some promise there, but still, that being said, we waited far too long for a decision that ended up being shared by the governor on Sunday, February 27th, that local school districts could provide choice for mask wearing decisions by families and by students on a case-by-case basis in our schools. There's really no modern management approach that advocates centralized decision-making from legislators, governors, or commissioners nearly 200 miles away from Livonia in Albany. All modern management approaches recommend that the closest to the problems are best positioned to creatively and collaboratively find the most effective, sustainable solutions. This is what passionate, committed educators in Western New York do every single day. We need to learn from the pandemic and ensure that local control continues to be provided in all possible areas of decision making. It is, after all, how American public education was founded. It was founded by communities coming together, establishing one-room schoolhouses, and making local decisions that are best for the students and responsive of their community. It is exactly the right approach to ensure that students in our schools are served within a responsive and supportive environment. And I think we must all admit that one-size-fits-all approach didn't work before the pandemic, didn't work during the pandemic, and isn't going to work as we emerge from this pandemic. And so we're proud that whatever push we were able to put on did seem to influence some decision makers, even though it took nearly a month for us to get to the point where we are today, with smiling, fully engaged kids in our schools throughout Western New York.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. That was a bit inspirational there. So thanks for this opening, and thank you all for listening. What we're going to do is we're going to take a very short break, commercial break, and come back with a panel with these three gentlemen, and you'll be able to ask them questions as we talk. I will say this. What we're talking about tonight is local control, local rule, home rule. It goes by a lot of different names. And this is a trend that we've been seeing accelerate recently, not just for particular issues, but as a philosophical move in general. Really, I think it exploded with earnest last August when Cattaraugus County passed their constitutional county resolution, and several others have since done the same, towns at least. But I'll give you some breaking news. We just got this in tonight. Tonight, the town of Warsaw met, and Dan Walczyk tells us that they have unanimously passed their constitutional resolution. So another town in Western New York has joined the ranks of this home rule, local rule sort of effort that's going on. So we'll be right back after this message with our panel. So stay tuned, everyone.
Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. "50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York. Discover the secrets in your own backyard." Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It's time for the panel now, and as we go to the panel, we're going to make things look a little different to give you a sense that this is a panel. So let's wave our hands and switcheroo. There we are. We're all together as a panel now. For those of you who are watching live, remember, if you'd like to ask a question, just put it in the chat, and I will see it, and we'll bring it over to the panelists as we talk. So I'm gonna start reversing the order a little bit, because I think Matt, you were in Albany yesterday, and you talked to a bunch of people and touched on some of the issues that we're talking about right now. What did you come away with? What did you find out?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, every trip I make to Albany over my 9 years as superintendent is always interesting and often frustrating, and just the kind of thinking that happens. Again, as I had mentioned, there's multiple areas of our state that are just very, very different. I've been on calls over the years where certain individuals who work in Albany, talked about subways. And didn't realize that, some of our communities don't even have a subway shop, let alone a subway. And so it's just a very different context. Two of the things that we'll be working to try to educate Albany about we're not really sure how they're going to play in our local communities is, as the governor announced earlier in January, of requiring all school buses to be green by 2035 and requiring us to purchase only green energy electric buses starting in 2027. Again, lots of people can debate on the different merits of whether that's good or not. But the fact of having a unfunded and B mandate from Albany on all of our local contexts without considering a number of things, both budgetarily. I mean, these buses move from costing a district around $125,000 to $150,000 to $350,000 to $400,000. And what will that mean for each local community? The infrastructure to maintain those, and then just purely the very differences that many other communities have much smaller commutes and much smaller bus runs. We run, even if you talk about athletics on a Saturday, right now the current range for a bus might be able to get our kids from point A to point B, but probably not bring them home. And so if there isn't another charging field, on the other side, or we can't have a hybrid, because right now it's saying you can't have a hybrid. We'll be a lot of different challenges that are there. So, that's frustrating. They're not, I don't think, thinking about the realities of rural Western New York and the geographic spread that most of our school districts have. And the other one that's been rolling around for a number of years is much like VAL reform, but it's for school discipline and limiting our ability in schools to suspend students is a real concern. No educator I've ever met in my over 20 years ever wants to not have a kid in school. We are programmed and designed and educated and committed to keep kids with us. That's what we want. So none of us look for suspensions. But certainly there are very specific contexts and things that happen in students' lives and in different dynamics that require some time away from the classroom for us to regroup and make sure the supports are there. And so the idea to have a legislative, it's a law, it's not just guidance, it's not recommendation. They're talking about passing a law from Albany that would restrict the ability to suspend students in different examples and different times. The law of unintended consequences certainly fit both the Green Rebel buses in rural New York as well as suspension. So those are just two that I kind of walked away scratching my head about and trying to make sure that we work together as school superintendents to educate lawmakers in Albany to ensure that those kind of things don't stick, at least as they've been presented at this point in the legislative cycle.
So, Matt, you've actually inspired some of our attendees. We've got a couple of questions. One I think is for you, and one might be for Skip or John. So we'll start with you again, Matt, just since you have the floor right now. How can people, or what can people do? How can they oppose the electric vehicle mandate? From the school's perspective, if I can understand exactly what you're saying in terms of the cost from particularly rural districts that don't necessarily have a large tax base. This is a huge infrastructural cost. What could people within those districts do to work with their school to oppose these mandates?
Yeah, I think it was newly proposed by the governor, and so many superintendents met in Albany to learn more where it is. So anybody across this listening area will likely hear from their school superintendent of ways to write and engage your representatives. By and large, I think at the state level, most of our constituents here in Western New York have very helpful listening ears in Albany. The problem in New York, at least in my perspective, is that those listening ears don't have much sway in how the state is now carved up and the political calculus that exists in New York State. And so, what could people do? We always should share our voice. We always should make sure that our representatives know our perspectives on things and know what we believe. I believe schools will make sure they will start sharing the realities of what those are after our meetings early this week. I think there's just a real uphill challenge that we have in Western New York as far as the politics and the decision making that happens in Albany. And so we'll keep fighting, and I'm going to keep advocating. I'll never stop. Political calculus is very, very interesting here in our state, for sure.
So we had a similar question at the town level. John, you might be able to tackle this one, at least initially, and that is that the person who's asking the question, their town, initially they quietly didn't comply with the mandates, but eventually they caved in, at least they're saying, to a solar mandate. So from a town board perspective, how could the residents of the town work with, help, support the town board in sending this kind of message to Albany that these mandates really don't apply to the local community where they're from?
So I think it's really important for anyone kind of decision to understand that you need to educate your town board. Just because they're elected and that because they're sitting at that head table doesn't mean that they're as knowledgeable about a particular issue as you are. And what we did was, when we found out about this issue, we packed the board meetings, and we were not there to scream and yell. We were there with presentations to get them informed and get them to the point of being able to do something about this. We ended up not wanting to, so we turned the town board, but we were involved, and I think that's the point, that you have to be involved. In terms of a solar mandate, I'm not quite sure, even though according to the new laws, a developer can basically throw it at the state of New York and be given permission to put any kind of a wind, solar, or battery storage project there. So if that's the kind of thing that you're talking about, one thing that a town board can do, and one thing that you can make a lot of noise about, is initiate a moratorium on that particular project so that no decisions are made at all for at least 6 months. And normally, those moratoriums can go for another 6 months, just a simple application. So I guess my point is, in order to get the town board to the point where they're going to want to fight for you, you've got to educate them, and you've got to make sure that they understand what the issues are for everyone in the town.
All right, thanks. Go ahead, Skip. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, you can deal with a lot of those issues through zoning, and very carefully zoning and make it unattractive. That's what towns in Erie County have done to discourage some of that type of development and try to push it into more desirable areas, or not at all. So there is zoning that you can do, but again, you got to push for a home rule and say, do it.
Now,
Yeah,
wasn't the zoning thing what they were going to try to eliminate in this year's budget, if I heard correctly?
I believe so, but it failed at this point.
Right. Go ahead,
There's
John.
so
You were going to.
I wanted to just jump in on that, Skip. I think that's a great point. The one thing to remember, though, is that the the Accelerated Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefits, passed as a budget amendment in 2020, basically allows the state to waive any and all town zoning law that they believe would be unreasonably burdensome. And then the new law that came into 2021 also added reasonably burdensome to the developer, but that would pose a roadblock meeting its climate goal. Okay, we did a lot of good zoning law work. Everything from ensuring that we had far enough setbacks to ensure the safety of people, health, and folks, and a number of other things. But I think it's important to understand that in this push for home rule, this attack on home rule by the state, they're willing to stop at very, very little, as is evidenced by the fact that they can override our laws if they they'll feel that they need to. And that's why you just got to be real out of pain that anybody that wants to come into the town, you need to be paying state so that if they do decide they're going to come in, then you're going to have a lot of upset just in your town, but in other towns basically saying, why are you picking on these guys?
Somebody has mentioned if there was a template for this home rule resolution that was passed by Warsaw. I know that you guys aren't up to speed on that because it just happened, but I will say that we had previously published the template that I believe Cattaraugus County used, and I understand that's a county resolution, not a town resolution. But when we post this on our site, we'll try to link to that resolution that Warsaw has. Maybe Brenda, if you could get more details for us on that and a link to that, we'll get it to there. And one of the local newspapers probably will be running with that story, and we'll see if we can get a link to that story too. Skip, I wanted to go over to you on, and I know that you and John, when we were doing like the pregame yesterday, the practice round of this, you were talking both about this, and I'd like that conversation to continue. And Skip, this is really your thing. It's the whole idea of towns seceding from their counties. It's a very novel concept, very formative stages. Can you just elaborate a little bit more about what's going on in Erie County, maybe what the towns are involved, and what are they finding out about the process?
Well, we found out it came to a head over the mandates that we actually had people in businesses stated, can we go to a neighboring county? And we neighbor Wyoming County. And at the time, I didn't think too seriously. We did make the statement. And then as we did research and looked into it, there is a provision in the state constitution to do just that. And so we found out how to do it. You can have a board resolution to go ahead and move forward on the process, or do it by legal petition where you get 20% of the residents sign on, which triggers the process to start, where you do a formal study to figure out what is the pros and cons of going from one county, leave one county, go to another. And we're actually in the pre-stages of that study now. And then you have it up for vote, and then the people decide by referendum. It's obviously greater than 50%. We talked about it, then another town next to us, town of Wales, said yes, and another town, Holland, is on board. We just had a meeting a little over a week ago in the town of Wales, because we've been meeting, and it's grown to where now we got 6 to 7 towns that are interested in the rural part of Erie County to actually leave and go to Wyoming County, and we're just figuring out the logistics, what the practicality. I did a preliminary study on how they would affect Wyoming County as far as population. Wyoming County is 40,500 residents roughly, and if we took the 5 towns that we were originally talking, that looked at pro doing this, we would make up about 36 to 37% of their population, and probably almost half their budget with the assessed value we're bringing in, sales tax, mortgage tax, so forth. And so we'd have a large impact, and we'd have a negative impact on Erie County, because we are actually net contributors, and that's why we've been arguing with Erie County. We don't get our attention because we're overshadowed by the urban population of Buffalo and the other 2 cities, the city of Tonawanda and Lackawanna, and the big suburbs. And we have a county legislature, and where the districts are wrote, like our county legislator has one good-sized suburb town and a number of rural towns, and he can ignore us totally and just worry about the suburban town and get enough votes to get reelected. And it wasn't just this issue, is our rural roads are not taken care of like they should be. We go into all the neighboring counties around us, and the rural roads are much better shape. Our county parks that are in the more rural areas don't get the equal attention that the more suburban or urban areas. We don't get the attention when it comes to like the youth hunting, was allowed in all the neighboring counties because they're more rural, and Erie County said no. So right across the county line, somebody that could hunt as 12 to 14-year-olds with their parents, but could not do it in Erie County. And again, we border that. So we're looking at two things. I mean, most of us say we do not want to leave Erie County. We've historically been part of Erie County. So, but we are pushing Erie County to say, hey, we count. It's going to hurt you more than us if by us leaving. There's more towns growing. If it was just the town of Monroe, it would not be practical. But so we're looking at either Erie County is going to enter in the contract with the rural towns and make them compliant, to address our concerns, or we're going to leave. And it's roughly probably take about 2 years time when you do everything. I mean, you can do it faster than that, but realistically how things go. And so that's where we're at. And because of what we're doing and apparently got picked up, we understand the town of Webster in Monroe County is actually looking to go to their neighboring county, and I believe that's Wayne County.
Mhm.
And then I've been asked a number of times if this has been ever done anywhere else in New York State, and as far as we can tell, it's never done on this size of magnitude, as far as the whole town going, or especially not 5 or plus towns going.
You have to go back to the early 1800s when a lot of the Western New York counties were formed, that you had towns leaving, one county to go to another county. Has Wyoming County given you any indication of their feelings out?
Yes, we have been in unofficial talks with they're the board of supervisors, and we've talked to a number of the supervisors over there, and their county highway department, because they would have to pick up a lot of our decrepit roads, and actually they're all positive. They like to see us come because they see that we'd be a net contributor and that we would actually help their tax base out and help them overall, and that we're so similar as far as our way of our way of life and how we approach problems, like our guests have spoke about. We believe in we the people, empower the people to do the right thing, and you're going to ultimately get better results than one size fits all. And that's the way we approach it. We've already been told that they do not want certain towns to come over to Wyoming County because they're more, I fail a better term, but more liberal. And so they don't want their county to turn into something like Erie County.
So does Albany have to do anything in this, or could this just be between the two counties?
Well, after the vote goes through, and we're looking at where we wouldn't do it town by town, we'd actually map it out, all the towns that'd be interested, and would be a greater impact by going into one county. And we figure Wyoming County is the most practical for us versus trying to go to Cattaraugus or even Genesee. So once that passed, we map out the whole thing, so we get 50% of that mapped out area. Say just theoretically got 5 towns. I think it's going to grow beyond that because we got more interest. And then each county would have to agree. Wyoming County most likely they would see the benefit and would agree to it. Erie County most likely would also realize that this is not so good and would say no. Well, there is a process in the Constitution where you can take it to court, and it's pretty vague that says that if it's in the public good or the interest of the people, then the courts can force that to be annexed. And so Erie County theoretically wouldn't be able to stop us. Right now, because the county thinks that because the town of Monroe, Wales, has been public on it, and actually we've been on national news over it, at Fox News, is that they think it's just 2 towns, but they are starting to really grow. So they've been actually hammering us and telling us how bad we move and how we are irresponsible, and they were not thinking it through. I don't think they realize how much we are really thinking it through, and that it's not a political game. We're serious about it. Either Erie County is going to wake up, and we did put we're working on a proposal, which we're going to probably release next week once all the supervisors and the representatives agree to it, that we actually developed a contract with rural Erie County that we're going to want the county government to adopt if we're going to stay, and they're going to have to adhere to it. And one of those things is in there. We realistically know we can't get the board of supervisors back in Erie County, but we would like to set up a advisory board of supervisors made up of nothing but rural towns and communities where they would be required to meet with that board twice a year and the county executive in a public forum. Because I think all of our guests know and people know, we do things in a public forum, it's much more pressure on our leaders and representatives to do stuff. And I think the most disappointing thing, and I think my fellow guests probably have the same thing, is yes, there's more the conservative side is in the minority, and when it comes to Albany, we're in the minority when it comes to the Erie County. And what I don't like to hear is from that minority that says, well, there's nothing we can do, and you're just going to have to live with it. And I don't agree with it, and I don't think any of our guests agree with it. The little town of Marilla is a little over about 5,200 people, and we made waves across the state and helped make a movement and make people start listening, waking up to us. So I think that you just got to have your facts straight, stick to the issue at hand, and keep pushing forward. And you're going to force change to happen eventually. It might not be overnight, but you force it.
One person, let me just ask this real fast. One person wanted to know if the Association of County Managers could help in this in any way.
I'm not, well, Erie County don't have a county manager, we have a county executive. But Wyoming County would have a manager, because Board of Supervisors. And then I believe Niagara County has county legislators, but they hire a manager. They don't have a county executive. Some other counties operate that way too.
So this is going to be between the relevant counties. There's nothing really to be gained to this county. This is an association of all counties, really.
Right.
Not really relevant for this.
But what I think it shows the growing trend, and even among our states, there was 319,000 people that left New York State between July of 2020 and 2021, and it was the largest exit of any state in the union. And I think what you're seeing is people leaving where they can to more similar to their views. And when we're in such a state that is not really business friendly, it's the 49th worst state to do business in, and the highest tax state in the union, actually beats out Hawaii and California. So, and I think because we can't leave the state so well, and we got to stay in here to fight, our best option is go to a county that more represents our values.
Mm-hmm. Now, we got another question, and John, I think this one might be for you. This person is trying to get their county to pass a county resolution, a constitutional county resolution, similar to what Cattaraugus County did, and everyone is excited about it, but a couple of legislators say that it's just virtue signaling and doesn't have any real impact. So the question is, I mean, what's the difference between something like that and something that you did when you passed your home rule legislations? I mean, it was really a resolution, right? Isn't that what you passed?
Yeah, it was a home rule resolution, or not in my town, or this is a resolution, that kind of thing.
So how do we overcome this obstacle where people say, well, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a feel good sort of thing. I mean, in your case, it actually did something. So it was more than feel good.
Yeah, it did work, and the reason it worked is because we kept pounding the message, making sure that our county legislatures understood it, and they basically said, we're not going to stand in the way of whatever the town wants. So that was kind of how it worked at the county level, and we worked with representatives as well to let them know what we were doing, and we still are in touch with them at all times. So I was just on the phone with Jacob last week to talk about some other issues that are pertinent to the town. So I don't consider it to be virtue signaling, because it's a piece of law, it's a piece of resolution that's in the record. And we always thought about, look, we can sit here and do nothing, and we can talk, or we can actually pass resolutions, and those resolutions build the case for us. That's what we did. I mean, with this project that we successfully fought, at least to this point, we were not looking at just resolution. We were looking at the totality of the documentation that we were developing, because we were generating case. If we go to court with this with the state on this particular project, we could prove that since 2014 we have been clearly and vehemently, vocally, and documented in a documented way against this thing. So I don't know. I don't consider it virtue signaling. I think that it's one piece of the puzzle that you must have. You must show that you're committed to getting this thing done. The other question I have is, well, if it's the county legislature, and two of them are talking virtue signaling, well, as far as I know, two's not a quorum. And if you've got the rest of the county legislature with you, then, I would make the presentation at a county board meeting. Educate them. Let them know this is so important. Let them know why it's not virtue signaling, and make it so that those virtue signaling legislators are going to have a hard time saying no when they vote on it.
So Matt, let me ask you the same question, because in your case, it wasn't even a resolution. It was just a letter. And a letter has no authority whatsoever, and yet you were able to combine yourself with all the other school districts in Livingston County to make this statement. Why? How would you answer that question of this being more than just virtue signaling?
Yeah, I'd be honest to say I'm not naive to believe that because I titled it to Governor Hochul or Commissioner Bassett that they actually received it and they actually read it themselves. But that still doesn't mean it wasn't the right thing to do in the right time, and that certainly doesn't mean that somebody in their offices or some other state level advocacy groups or wherever didn't start, and moving on that. We also saw that, together other regions of the state superintendents did the same thing. We broadened that. It was our 22 school districts across Livingston, Wyoming, and Genesee County that's within a cooperative that we work through. They also issued letters, and so I think it's fundamental to our democracy. I'm a social studies teacher before being a superintendent. That's how I started my career, and teaching case after case that in U.S. history, this is what we're about. This is where democracy in America fundamentally comes together, is people sharing their values and sharing their beliefs and advocating for what they believe in. And when and if we lose that, we've lost far more than any one issue we might be talking about. We really lost this great nation we all live in.
Excellent, thanks. So we're at a point now. Oh, did you want to say another thing, Skip?
You can make a point that the guests are coming across is you can pass all the resolutions or send all the letters you want, but if you don't act on them, nothing's going to happen, and that's the difference. You got to act on what you pass or what you send out.
And I think just piggybacking off of what John said, when we interviewed the folks from Cattaraugus County, one of the things they realized is at some point they have to be prepared to go to court to really challenge the state the way they want to challenge the state. And so there is an action, there's an implied action, it sounds like, even with these resolutions the resolutions are just resolutions. They're just pieces of paper. You've got to back it up, like you say, Skip. Let's do this. We're at a point now where we're going to break into the third segment. If you're watching the replay of this is going to be the end of the show for you. We're going to play the ending for you. If you're on live right now, stick around through the ending. We're going to open it up. We're going to open up the forum to everybody, so everybody could talk with themselves. The guests can hear you. We figured out how that worked, so you'll be able to talk to them directly. And I know a lot of people either chatted everyone or sent chats to me that I wasn't able to get to in this half-hour segment. So definitely bring those up in the general discussion. So for those of you who are watching the broadcast after it was live, the rebroadcast of it, I want to thank you for coming, and let's switch back to our studio view here. And if you want to be a part of the State of Greater Western New York.com, we do live shows every Thursday at noon, except tomorrow is going to be a replay of this, so that's not going to be live. But normally it's live, and it's about any other thing, any normal thing. Sometimes it's politics. Sometimes it's lots of different subjects. You can go to the website and see some of the past shows that you did. If you want to get that private invite, it's free. Just sign up. We'll put you on the list, and every Thursday morning you'll get there. So for right now, I want to thank our guests. I want to thank our audience for being part of this show. Stick around. We'll be right back for those who are live. Otherwise, for those who are watching now, we'll see you later. Again, this is Chris Carosa of the State of Greater Western New York Report saying bye-bye for now.